Hi, colleagues. You've selected the Planning a Read Aloud module, and here I just want to show you my steps for how I prepare and plan a read aloud. Having a read aloud planned out as to what you're going to say to students will help the prompts that you give will lead kids to deeper thinking than if you just read off the cuff, so to speak. So I'm going to show you how to plan a read aloud from a picture book, but you could apply this method that I'm going to show you to any kind of text. It could be a chapter book as well. So obviously one thing that's helpful is to read the entire book first, to have it in your head so that you can reread it, thinking about the things that you want to guide students to do. And when you come back, you can come back to the text with two ways. And you could do both of these things, or you could do one or the other. One way is to go through the text thinking about the things that you did that you think would be helpful for kids to also do. Another thing that you could do is you could go in through a particular angle, like you could angle your mini lesson to whatever it is that you're teaching. If you're in a character unit, you could have a lot of heavy prompting and questioning around character. If you're in an interpretation unit, it could be around themes and so on and so forth. Whatever it is that you happen to be teaching, you could also angle the read aloud toward, or it could just be a smorgasbord of all the good skills, whatever the book seems to show. One thing I always start off with at the beginning of my read aloud is a brief book introduction, if it's a narrative, and then something I want the kids to pay attention to. So the angles that I might be taking in this book. In the introduction, I try to just give some basics without giving away the farm on the book. And then I'd say, here are the things I want you to look for. So in this case, I say, it's a story about a girl, the narrator. I want to say that because that might be a tricky thing that pops up because their narrator's name never appears, who lives with her aunt who wants a car, right? That's essentially the book. And then the angle that I want to take for this read aloud and this choice is to pay attention to the characters' problems, the characters themselves, the issues they face and how they respond. Now, I could go through other angles. Like if you're interested in author's craft, you could say, this is going to be our second read. We're going to pay attention to what is Meg Medina doing here and why do we think she's doing it? And then you could bring out those craft cards and use those as well. Then the three different things that I do inside the read aloud is I plan out my think alouds, like what I'm comprehending and making that observable to kids. I plan out my turn and talks, and I plan out like a stop and jot. So you can see here, I like to put that onto Post-its and code it as well. So here, after the first page, I'm going to plan to think aloud just to orient myself to the who, what, when, where of a text. Notice I just give myself a little prompt. I know what I'm going to say, so I don't need to write the whole thing, but you might need, if you are more comfortable, you may need to script out exactly what you're going to say. I just need like a running start. I love the envisionment here so much that I'm just going to think aloud my envisionment here. And our first turn and talk is going to happen here over to Andreas, and I usually code as TNT, right? And then as we flip through, I have more turn and talks. As is natural with me, I tend to do mostly turn and talks throughout a read aloud, but I do a lot of think alouds at the beginning of a book. And then, as I mentioned, I usually do one stop and jot. They may be assessed on a jot lot at the end of the section. So I plan to read to here, like halfway through the book, and this is going to be my stop and jot. It's going to be a character trait stop and jot that kids could put onto a jot lot and that I could assess. Now, this is angled to more of a third grade. So just to keep in mind, if you're, a fourth or fifth grade teacher, you want to angle your question. So they're going to give a fourth or fifth grade response where they have to do like multiple traits, things of that nature. So that's essentially it, is, reading the text ahead of time, giving a little bit of book introduction and angle what you'd like them to pay attention to, and then writing out and coding where you're going to think aloud, where you're going to channel kids to turn and talk, and where you might invite kids to do some stopping and jotting. I would take a few minutes, take 15 minutes with your colleagues and plan together or plan alone, and then share what you've done. The great thing about planning interactive read alouds is you have it forever. And you can give it to a colleague, like, here's my interactive read aloud plan. It's right on the Post-its. And another thing that's nice about it too, is once you've planned it out, you can be more improvisational. You can say to yourself, well, this is my plan, but as I read it, if I notice something else that may be sort of alluring or exciting, or I didn't notice, and now I notice it, you can more extemporaneously, more improvisationally um, give that to kids. And it's going to be even better because you've already planned it. And it's kind of like you can improvise because you know the book so well. So happy planning.